All right, so this is sort of a response to KitchenTableTCG. Louis was talking about how he had held on to a certain number of boxes for 5 years, and he had made this promise to himself when he first started collecting and investing in sealed product, and that the time had come for War of the Spark and Throne of Eldraine and I guess Guilds of Ravnica and that kind of stuff to be moved out. And he had kept it in his house, and it had flooded a couple times, and he had to move this stuff several times over the years. So the amount of space that it takes up and having to move it, kind of added to the impetus to sell it. And if you look back at a lot of Rudy's old videos about investing in sealed product, he's one of the people that sort of brought this idea to the foreground. There were others before him that were talking about it, but his whole channel was centered around the idea, and the other stuff that he talked about all converged with this idea. And his whole thing was that, these things are small and they can be stored, but he lives in Florida where they don't have basements. He makes a joke about being in the basement, but when you have a basement that floods, then yeah, you got to move it. So you got to keep these things above ground. And his warehouse, kind of, is that thing. He's got several different locations, and they're all above grounds, and most of the stuff is on skids. So even if there was some flooding, he's pretty protected from that kind of thing. Maybe all this stuff is on the second floor. We have no idea. He's got several Indiana Jones style warehouses full of magic product, and it makes me think of some of the places that I've gone as a trucker and looking and seeing, like, I've seen actual warehouses that do look exactly like the end of Indiana Jones. But his whole thing was that they're easily stackable and they're storable, and one of the things about the finances, you kind of have to watch a lot of his whiteboard videos and some of his other videos that aren't necessarily as popular, that the curve for the financials of these things, they flatline for a long time. And it's a minimum of 3 to 5 years to see any sort of movement. And the first movements are at the very beginning at release, and that's at their highest, and then they drop, and then they stay flat for any number of years. And at some point, then there's a spike. It's not this gradual increase over time. You can't watch the chart and say, oh, now we're going to start cooking, it's going to start going up, and I just need to hold on for another 3 years and it'll be at this point. No, it seems to be almost random. There'll be a spike, and then people will suddenly realize that this stuff is not readily available, and then maybe there's cards in it that people want, or maybe it's a good draft experience, but you kind of just have to hold on to it because you're holding on to it for a lot of this product, and then at some point there's an exit point. And in this case, Louis felt that it was taking up too much space. He didn't want to move it again, and he wanted the cash flow for something else, and so he went out of War of the Spark and Throne of Eldraine. And those specific era products are some of the most overproduced products, because Wizards was really ramping up production in that time period, and a lot of people have it. Louis talks about how the people have been bringing in collections to him, and they include these boxes anyway, so he'll never kind of run out of these boxes. And some of them are still available at distribution, although at higher prices than they were initially at distribution. So these Bronze Era products, as Rudy has labeled them, starting with prior to the beginning of his channel, basically after the 2008 meltdown, the products that came out in the 2010s have only just started to move. Back in 2016, Tarkir and Kaladesh and the Theros and, even going further back to Avacyn, those things had already kind of moved up. But since that time, they've kind of been flatlined. And those earlier 2010 products have had a leg up recently, around the time that Wizards of the Coast banned the word Kaladesh. So it seems like maybe we're still lagging, the market is lagging behind on the prices for the 2016 to 2019 era of boxes, and maybe the market's right, maybe the market's wrong. You have no idea, and we have no idea when that change will come and when there'll be a spike. So, is it time to sell it? Is it time to hold on to it? I think no one really knows. And I do like what Louis said about the collector boxes. They take up less space. And it's that whatnot and streaming thing of people online opening boxes. What will people want to open now in the future? And how much of it is out there? That's kind of how you have to look at these things if you're going to be holding on to things, and how long you're going to be holding on to things. You got to factor these things in, how long you're willing to do it. So with that, what do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I think holding out, like, just even from your own personal experience, from all the, what was it again? Three Kingdoms cards. Like, yeah, that was a rare set, and for a long time, nobody played because of horsemanship, or nobody used it at all, and it wasn't, none of those cards were sought after for a very long time. Like, maybe 15 plus years, until eventually, and I played with them just, willy-nilly, and then eventually you found your, collection again, and you got it appraised, and there was value there. And that was open product too. Imagine having, the sealed Three Kingdoms thing, how much that, those are obviously worth a lot right now. So yeah, I think there is always the dip and then the flat line, and then eventually, for whatever random reason, people will just flood back to a set, miss a set. Yeah, and we never even know, like, next generation of kids might think that streaming Magic cards is stupid, and streaming anything is stupid. So, you never know. That might just take a whole 180, and people might get more into, flesh and blood aspect of card playing, and want tangible cards and want to do it themselves, and not want to engage online all the time. There might be a total flip. So, and then cards will be worth all kinds. Or you might get a Kaladesh situation where, for some reason, War of the Spark gets banned, because war is not a good word. People are afraid of war, stuff like that. You never know. And so I think holding on to it, as long as you're not putting yourself in debt storing it, I think it's good.
Yeah, and I think with your example with Portal 3 Kingdoms, back when I was selling those cards, I also looked on eBay to see if there were any sealed boxes, and there were. There were a bunch of English sealed boxes from Turkey and Israel, and those disappeared within like 2 years, and they're never coming back to eBay. And, I don't think anyone is selling one of those, and I think they were only they were less than $5,000. I remember that.
Yeah, and these boxes, you may have tons of them. People might be bringing in lots of them in your area, but there might be an area, inside the United States, outside the United States, Alaska might just, a bunch of people in Alaska might just want War Spark, and no one else has it. So you never know.
All right.
That's my thoughts.
Yeah. Have a good day, guys.